We're here. Getting most of the problems in there. You're about to run or what's up? Well, get close. You can dry up a little bit now, doesn't it? Never hit that large heavy though before that rain came in last week. Was that last weekend? You just going over here.
Totally different thing.
The way you're walking, you haven't gotten better.
I haven't got much feeling from my knees down. My feet, I can't feel my feet. Except the protein always brushing me. Protein is what's that? Yeah. I've got to go every 3 weeks and this started last June when it started. But the infusions didn't start in September. They've got me hooked out right now throughout March of next year. And it takes 3 hours to do that infusion. So by the time I get done, it's 73 hours to go in recliners and it just whips you.
Tag team back and forth.
Yeah, I just want to catch up with it.
Well, that's really good.
I'll take a good picture.
I'm sorry, I don't hear. Gina, maybe you have something to do with solar.
Yeah, we're developers.
Oh, you got it. I'll sit by you.
I go to friends that have
Yeah, we're gonna tax you today. Just kidding. I'm on the camera. Mike. Some cameras. You should make
His first case and they're the biggest trouble maker. No. He didn't hear what they boss night. They got trouble. Yeah, he's stuck up. He's going
He was 6'7".
I actually
Thank you.
Okay, you're not speaking to me anymore.
But yeah, because the guidelines. So we don't have to spend this coming year.
All right, we'll be getting started here in the next few minutes. Hopefully a few more people making in. Getting online. Are they okay over there hearing us? They hear us? There you go. And make sure they chime in when they need to, if they need to.
I'm not sure who to call first. They're on the phone.
You good?
Well, I don't know if three people on the phone can hear us. They're not on mute.
We got 5 different people there trying to.
Yeah, I don't know who they are. Test. I can't confirm if they can hear us. The speaker's on the out, right?
All right, so we're about ready to get started. We need to see if the people online are able to hear us. We see 2 people on phones and 3 people look like they are online, from what I can see. Henry, can you hear us? Are you on mute? Can you hear us?
I've requested it, I'm no response.
Okay. Okay, if anybody online or on phones, if you can hear us, try to chime in so that you know that you can hear us.
Yes.
Yeah, who's that? Is that?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. 2 different people.
There's a call in, I believe she just spoke.
Okay.
Those Tyson on the phone.
Tyson, are you on phone?
I'm on a phone.
Okay.
Can you say the names of these people, Chuck?
They don't even have their names labeled.
On the
Oh,
phone.
They're calling.
Okay, but when she says that's her, can
Well,
you
I'm
ask
not-
her what her names are?
I don't know if I can actually I'm like, hanging up on, I don't know how to change it.
All right, somebody just disappeared there, so. All right, well, we'll try to do the best we can here. Now, when they have a question, they can message you online.
You should be able to, yes.
What about they're on the phone? Can they text something to you or just the
I
people
don't know
online?
about phone lines.
So if you're online and you want to have a question or concern, message us and then we'll try to bring it up. All right, so we're going to get started. We'll stand, let's see what's supposed to here. Call this to order. Let's stand for a pledge. I think you always go east. That's it, that's what I remember. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For housekeeping purposes, we're going to do a roll call. Who's all here? Brenda, just like to do a roll call, please.
Starting with BZA. Powell.
Present.
Johnson. Jones.
Here.
Long.
Here.
Maynard.
Yeah.
Monroe. Hartman.
Here.
APC. Boswell. Frankel.
Here.
Cottle. Cows. Hedrick. Jones.
Here.
Fleming. Maynard.
Here.
Monroe. Mowry. Knuckles. Todd.
Here.
Reedy.
Stay here. All right, first, good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Area Plan Commission. Also tonight, we have the Board of Zoning Appeals, because there may be some issues relating to their involvement in this proposed ordinance. The purpose of tonight's meeting is for Area Plan Commission to review the drafted ordinance to date, ask questions, and hopefully give directions on some unresolved issues. Some areas we may need to ask questions from involved parties, so that's why you have been invited. We are not here to determine if a solar energy system can be in Grant County because they are already here. Right now, we have no regulations governing this kind of development. Our task is to produce an ordinance for solar energy systems, have a public hearing, and forward our recommendation to the county commissioners. This process started back in July. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan here in just a few moments. He'll quickly go over the process to date of everything that's happened and got us to tonight. And then we'll talk about some outstanding issues that is in the current draft. Hopefully work towards a consensus to a final draft with the ultimate goal of hopefully having a draft for our December meeting to have a public hearing and forward a recommendation to the county commission. That would be the ideal scenario. That was our goal. We'll see if we can make it there. So Ryan, if you can go back to July and bring us to today.
Hello, for those that don't know me, my name is Ryan Lott. I'm the Director of Area Plan. Just briefly, some of you have already heard this once, but to give some background on how we got here, basically in June, July, we had a committee of Commissioners Council, Growth Council, and Area Plan get together and discuss starting a solar ordinance. From that meeting, Area Plan started putting together the ordinance. What we found back in July is only about 42 jurisdictions in the state actually had a solar ordinance. We reviewed 15 to 20 of those ordinances. One of the things that we found really quickly is that no two ordinances are the same. We ran into, we kind of note here, different terminologies, costs, setbacks, overall requirements. Even the sizes of the ordinance were at extremes. If you look, Randolph County, their solar ordinance is at 48 pages. If we go to Huntington, their solar ordinance is at 3 pages. So it was really kind of all over the place. We didn't have a template out there, so what we did, again, we went through about 15 to 20 ordinances. We got it down to about 5, and then from there, we set a template, trying to be as close as we could right down the middle. When we go to the state and we talk about a template, the state actually has no template for solar energy, but they do have solar energy in Indiana code. But it is for space heating and cooling and water. But you can kind of see with the state tells us that it is the policy of the state to promote and encourage the use of solar energy. Currently in Grant County, solar energy is, through our land use tables, considered a utility, and as a utility is allowed in every zone by special exception, with the exception of mobile home parks. Grant County, currently we've got 4 solar farms that are installed, one at Madison Grant, one at Oak Hill, one out at APC, and we also have one in Gas City that was annexed into Gas City. And there is a second solar farm in Gas City that's actually breaking ground in December. So again, one of the things that we run into right now is if the BZA would approve it through a special exception currently, once it is accepted, we have no regulation on the solar farm. So the solar farms that we have had come in, we have 0 regulation. When we started getting involved in looking at cost, we found out that some of the costs out there, or the permitting fees or application fees, compared to what we were charging, were night and day. What you've got up here right now is the original proposal for application costs and permitting fees, which a lot of this we're going to get into deeper as we get into the meeting. Here is basically Delaware put together a comparison of different counties in the state. As you can see, some counties are charging all the way up to $20,000 for application fees. Marta out of Delaware based this chart off of 1,000-acre solar farms. A lot of the permitting fees were up above $100,000. You see Gibson County over here charged $50,000 application. Some counties charge none. So again, what we had was all over the board. We tried to find some place in the middle. The original proposal that we put together, and then again, this is something that we'll discuss tonight. It was discussed in the Commissioner's Solar Summit meeting that we were looking at our costs being super high, and I know that was a big concern with some of our solar energy companies as far as with what our costs are. Is Grant County going to be solar friendly or not? A lot of it generated from what our costs were going to be. So when we talk about what's out there and what surrounding counties are actually charging for solar farms, with Madison Grant and Oak Hill solar farms, when they came in, we charged $35 total for each of them. When AEP came in, we charged $100. And with Gas City, they were annexed before we could actually do any charges. So again, to reiterate what Chuck was saying, basically we know that solar farms are currently allowed in Grant County. We have 4, soon to be 5, that are installed and operational. And we've got several solar farms projected to come into Grant County in the next 5 years. So again, it becomes, it's not a are we for or against. The question really becomes, do we want solar farms to be regulated or not? As So this is where the ordinance generated from. We're currently, at this point, we are on our fourth draft. Our hope is to get things finalized tonight if possible. And again, like Chuck said, moving forward to our December 6th public hearing.
Excuse me, Ryan.
Yes.
This meeting was advertised to begin discussion on the solar ordinance.
With
I don't
our-
really think we can complete that tonight.
No, it's not going to be completed tonight.
Well,
I think it's a rush.
it's
to
not
move
a
forward
rush,
with that.
and I'll state this because I don't think it's a rush, is this started back in July. And it's been in charge, or the Area Planning Commission, Area Planning Office, took the lead, or because it's their work, what they're supposed to do, and they've been working through 4 different meetings they've had, up to a fourth draft, to bring something to the Area Planning Commission to consider. So there have been summits and other meetings. I don't know how many drafts have been sent out to at least the Area Planning Commission for review and update and knowledge of what's going on or what's out there. So it's not like tonight's the first night this has happened. Yes, we're still hopefully maybe we'll get some tweaks or ideals, but it's been evolving, and this is the direction that it seems to be going. Now, yes, maybe we can tweak it with some things, but I don't per se see a major change in direction. That's how I see it.
But this is really only the first night.
Yeah.
We have really sit down and discussed this ordinance. We've been given emails, Chuck, and we've been stuff to look at.
Yeah.
But discuss down and say our opinion out loud tonight has not been given yet. The only way it's been given, I'm gonna tell you, because you and other people have been up in that office and talking to Ryan, and it's time to come back to us and give us our time to look it over. If this is where it's gonna be shoved on, I say right now, give it back to the commissioners and do what you want with it. We know what they want.
No, we're not going to do what they want to, that's for sure. But what we will do is this. When you said that there's no reason why, and you've already got almost saying that it's already ready to go.
Well, not totally.
No,
There's some
no,
areas.
this is what Ryan said. He said, well, solar farms are here to stay, so whether they want it or not, it's here. No, that's not the way this goes.
No, there's already 4 solar farms here.
Yeah, there's 4 here, but they're not definite that we're gonna have any more. So we don't wanna give anybody the impression that just because there's 4 here, that you guys are gonna say, it's okay, don't worry about the public.
Well, those, they're currently allowed right now.
They
for
are
special
allowed,
exception.
but it's up to us to decide where, when, how, and how much.
Because we could put a moratorium on it and say no more of this or that. It could be done.
Yes.
All right, so let's bring it back. The county commissioners are basically directing us to come up with the ordinance,
Right.
okay? They had input, many different players in the game had input to get us to where we're at today. And like you're saying, okay, we just throw it back to the commissioners,
We're not throwing it
and
back.
they'll write what they want, and then we'll be out of the loop altogether. So, our department, area plan, has been involved from the beginning of writing this, compiling many different ordinances that brought.
But then why did you make sure that you didn't invite the BZA to contribute to this ordinance? Because it has to come back to us to see what the
Well,
ordinance is. and
right
what it
now, the
says.
way it's written, anything goes to BZA.
Right.
The way the drafting and report approved conditions up to this point, they would like to see that change. To go through the area plan office, to,
Back to the commissioner.
Right, and
commission,
stop
and then
right
up to
there.
the
But
commission.
what I'm gonna make a Jensen, if they want that, then we need to send it back to them, and we wanna treat this like we do subdivision and CAFA. And that's where the final decision will be made in area plan. That's my opinion on it.
They want to treat it like a planned unit development.
Yeah, I wanna treat it where I know why they want it back in their hands because of the money.
Right.
I like to see a lot of money in this county. I know how poor this county is in a little way thing. And my own city's poor. But them trying to do what they're doing is wrong. Because it's really supposed to go through the BZA. If they want to change it, I sit on the area plan, and I'm going to be my recommendation that treat it like subdivision and CAFO, and we make the decision.
Well, as you can see, there are
This is what we're supposed to talk
strong
about at the
feelings
end and not
about
at the
this.
beginning.
And really, I think we can resolve these things and move forward together. But I think we need to make it an open process where people are informed. And I think that it will go better that way.
I agree.
Now,
And
yeah.
and the summit with the commissioners they had a few weeks back, there's a couple of us here, not very many from our parties. Tonight, when we actually have a public hearing, if it's resolved for the next meeting or the meeting after, there'll be time for input then too, as part of the public hearing.
So I appreciate you keeping an open mind on this process as we move forward with this. And we not stake out positions that, don't really make sense and don't involve the public. I would like to see us have public hearings when we actually are going to vote on this.
Oh yeah, it'll have to be a public hearing.
And when I said hearings, I meant actually more than one. There's another county, Franklin County, has done a good job looking at this actual problem with solar farms. And they felt that it was best to go through a rezoning process, create a new zone for actually agriculture, solar, energy. So they set up a separate line, so to speak, on the zoning table. And then it would go through a rezoning process, any land that wanted to be developed for a solar farm that was agriculture. Okay, that would also then have a special exception on the zoning table. So the process would be from area plan to the area plan commission for rezoning. And then it would move from there to the commissioners for them to review it and give their opinion, favorable or unfavorable, or no opinion. From there it would move to the BZA for a special exception. So there would be 2 public hearings. They would be at least a month apart. More chance for the public to actually know what's going on and discuss this. And then the decision, site location, is something the BZA has done historically for a long time. If you look at Indiana, there's 92 counties. 72 of them currently send this process through the BZA. It could be more, but I couldn't find on the other 20 exactly what they do. But the vast majority run through the BZA for good reasons.
All right. So those are things that maybe we'll get resolved tonight, maybe not. I know within our group is what we will recommend to commissioners. Commissioners will have an ultimate say as far as yay or nay, and we'll go from there. But I know Rex talked about money, financial things. I kind of lean towards the side that I would like to have an elected official be making that determination. Granted, out in Sweetser, we don't have a lot of areas where something like this could go in. It could go in at the school. There's a couple other properties where maybe something could go in. I would feel more comfortable that it be going through area plan, vacancy out in Sweetser for final approval rather than through the BZA. That's my opinion. Because the town of Sweetser has no representation on there.
Yeah.
Because of the way it's made up.
Yeah, but if you really look at the BZA, the way it's set up, we're supposed to listen to everybody in this county and look at the land and look at our ordinance, what our ordinance says we have to do, and look at it and take the complaints here and the complaints here, or the good here and the good here, and come up with what is good for the area, whatever's going into it. This way, you're not. Because when you leave it up to officials, like you, town council, if I left it up to you and you had a farmer friend, and I'm gonna bring this issue up right now, and he says, it's gonna come on my land, Chuck, what they're gonna make off of this, instead of farming, they're gonna rake it in, good, because I did a little bit of math there. And and to me, there could be some favoritism that you go the other way you're saying. This way, we have more people on our board, it's gonna be broader. Because you look at the commissioners, there's only 3 or 4 of them. Here, we got 13 of them. So there are gonna be a lot of different opinions from people from all over the county that's gonna have to say so. Because they're gonna be looking after their area and this other people. It's not gonna always be, well, money or this and that involved in it. By bringing it to the BZA, like our rule says, that's the right way. Because they've been a lot of time, Chuck, and you know this last year. We look at stuff and we say, why is it here? Why it ain't the BZA? Is that because the commissioners said it that way? And in my opinion, stuff like that, that's when we need to send it back to the commissioners and say, we're not giving you no recommendation, put it where it belongs. Because you follow the rules we got in our county, the way things are supposed to go, and what departments are supposed to go into the county. This is really supposed to go through the BZA. And I think the BZA have just enough knowledge of a town council or the commissioners have just as much knowledge, because I heard different say that we didn't have the expertise. I like to sit down, I do. I went through solar farm stuff with I&M when they put theirs in, because I was the district chairman of firemen in this county, and I know a lot. And when they say they got somebody on 24/7, yeah, they all do. But you have to ask where they live.
All right.
And I&M said they live in South Bend and St. Joe, Indiana, Michigan.
Okay, we're not gonna resolve that issue at the present time, right now.
That's where it should go, to the BZA, we should follow the rules of our rules.
But let's
And
go
you
back.
want to bend the rules.
We're gonna go back and hit the items that need to be addressed and try to get some consensus, and we'll probably zero back around. So that's the last item that we were gonna address. And try to discuss it some more.
Well, that come out of the office, our expertise. We didn't have good enough expertise. Come out of our office. And Ryan knows it.
All right,
And I fronted
so
him.
let's move on to, we got some 8 different items here that we're gonna try to address. Number 1, application fees and permits. So there was a chart in our package of what was recommended, or what seemed to be middle of the road. Right here. Got a page number on those up the handout. Here somewhere. All right. It's page 19 though in the book, all right? Oh. All right, so how do we come up with these, Ryan? We've had residential, 1 acre or less. This would be like a homeowner that wants to put a panel or 2 up in their yard or on the roof. And there are guidelines of where and things like that to do that, correct?
Right.
Currently. But residential, we're going to discuss it and then here on residential and how the process would work with that.
So as far as residential, that is going to be for your roof installed or solar arrays. Those right now are actually governed through the Indiana Residential Code. We're inspecting to that at this point. We actually do as far as the installation of, say, solar arrays or wall mounts based on accessory structure setbacks.
Doesn't that go through the BZA? These people that want panels on their roof, don't they have to come to the BZA?
That's a building permit. That's just residential, and like I said, it is actually governed in the Indiana residential code. Spoke to a couple of different jurisdictions, and $100 permit fees were pretty normal. So we didn't really have too much feedback with that. When we get into minor commercial, we're talking 1 to 10 acres. This is generally, again, going to be the Madison Branch, the Oak Hills, smaller commercial installations.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
These are going to be small businesses and school systems, and in the past, we've charged them almost nothing.
Right.
Right, okay. But to me, if a small business is looking at a $10,000 application fee and a $2,000 megawatt, which would be about a 10-acre, I assume here, a $12,000 fee to put in a small solar farm so that they can save money on their electric bill, I think that puts it out of most small business reach. I don't think they'd be interested in doing it. I'd like to see us promote that among small business people and get more solar energy, people offsetting their electric bills.
If you go to the very next page, but we had spoke about that in the summit meeting.
Okay, so 19 is not, okay, so there have been some adjustments.
Here you go, I'll get it up.
On the very back, page 20, on your handout.
So we had spoke about at the summit meeting, and a lot of the solar energy companies talked about, again, if we had it up to $2,000, that we were basically pricing them out.
Yes, I see what you've changed here. It's 5,000 permit, and then up to an additional 1,000
Set fee.
for that. It's still $6,000 for small business. It does not seem like we're promoting solar energy. If we were really promoting solar energy, I think we would want to do it at or near the cost that we would spend on approving their permit.
Now this Ed, is something that I've kind of added in there, because most of the ordinances, if you go through, they do not give any kind of concession for a minor. It is basically anything over 10 megawatts is $20,000. So that's why we brought that up.
And I can understand that other counties are charging more. It just doesn't ring true to me that that's what we ought to do, that we ought to encourage small business. This development, they're here, they're part of our community. I don't think we should charge them a fee that we can't justify a cost to the county to approve that. Now, most of the major companies that were here for your solar summit, they were proposing large solar farms. They expect, apparently, large fees. These are not the small business guys that are already in our community. And with a large solar farm can come large problems.
So,
Okay, a lot of the community may be upset if they live nearby.
if you look at actual cost of Madison Grant Solar Farm, their projected cost was $2.6 million.
They have to put that bill.
So $6,000 for them is a heck of a discount.
Well,
If you look at Oak Hill, it's just over $500,000, and AEP Solar was over $2 million. So
and we
again,
charged them $35.
right.
And if you're looking at a small business that's trying to make money and stay afloat, and they want to save some money on their electric bill, why pile on cost? I mean, I'm just not seeing it. I don't understand it.
What do you guys think? Since we're gonna be the ones that formulate the thing, you see where that's coming from?
Yeah.
And it does make some valid points that these are businesses that have established in Grant County, trying to be more efficient or control their costs. Did we, look at something a little bit cheaper, I guess is what you're saying.
I'm saying, do it for what
Right,
our
yeah.
costs are, maybe a little bit more. You know, in case our costs for some reason are go up. But I'm not saying make thousands of dollars on it. These are people in our community that pay their property taxes and provide services for us all. And we want to support solar energy, which is what the Indiana state code that you put up there was all about. Support it, promote it. Don't try and put up roadblocks to it. So,
And we've got several of the solar companies here, if anyone wants to speak on it, but I think what they'll tell you is we are basically at $6,000 of bargain basement price.
well, like you said, the cost of putting in a little solar farm is expensive too. And some of them will be pretty small, but yet they'll be minor commercial.
Well,
If it's in a commercial area, they're gonna have to pay the commercial price, even if it's a small, 1 acre.
Well, that's basic, no, 1 acre or less, would basically.
So if it goes to 1 acre,
We go
then
1
it
to 10
goes
acres.
to that higher price.
So let's say, Lowe's wanted to put solar panels on top of their roof.
Yeah,
I imagine their parking lot and whole ground's probably over 10 acres there maybe. So they'd be paying something a little bit bigger, so 5,000 plus the one.
Well, to look at Madison Grant Solar Farm, it was 3.5 acres. To look at Oak Hills, it was 7. So for both of them, instead of getting charged $17.50 per megawatt, they had a $1,000 set fee. Instead of $10,000 or $20,000 application fee, it'd be half of that price. And like I said, this is kind of trying to go. This is looking at several ordinances and trying to find something down the middle where, again, 6,000 is promoting, in the world of solar, is promoting small business. And that's why we established the minor, so that they wouldn't get charged $20,000 for a small farm.
I still think it's high.
Let me ask you a question. What would happen, if this is feasible, that some of these would be charged a percentage of the electricity they produce? So instead of charging a big amount up on the front end, that you have an ongoing income on a smaller basis based upon the amount of energy that is produced by the solar farm.
That could become a bookkeeping nightmare, I would think.
See, most of our smaller, most of these are going to be used for on-site consumption. So there's going to be, anything of access is going to be to the grid, but for the most part, you know, Oak Hill Solar Farm is to power up Oak Hill High School. Chuck, I don't know if we want to open it up to the floor.
I guess we could if we get from the
To
horse's
just
mouth,
get
so to
some-
speak. So what we're talking about mining for the moment, does anybody within there discuss on pricing permit fees? I see a hand up in the back there. State your name, please.
I'm Deborah Kane, President of the City Council. So Mr. Hartman is saying, what I'm understanding, is saying to charge what it would cost. But the proposal has a higher fee, so you're gonna make money, where does that excess funds go?
A lot of that is going to be in your inspections. It's going to be in the development in our office. Even with these smaller solar arrays, you're talking footing inspections, wiring inspections, connection inspections, substation inspections. So, I mean, we are going to, on our end of it, we are going to have fees to inspect that until completion. We'll also be, the monitoring and the enforcing later on.
Right now, get huge savings on the
So who's doing the inspections? Is that?
That's Grant County and Grant
That would
County
be our building
building
inspector.
inspector.
Okay, so so that's part of this application fee, it's already built in, or is the inspector's going to charge
No.
per their time, the hours that they spend?
So that's a flat fee for the service. So like, even when you come in to get a building permit to build a house, it's a set fee, and they go out at the prescribed times to inspect the different stages of construction.
It's also developmental because there'll be road use agreements, there'll be soil conservation. Think of all those now that I mean, it's going to go through a process, drainage board, erosion control. So, I mean, there'll be several steps before it ever gets to the point of actually getting a permit to be built. If we've got to bring in any special engineers. So that's that cost. And again, in most cases around the state, you'll find that there is no reduced cost for a minor. It is the same price as a major. I think I found that cutoff once or twice in 30 ordinances. So the hope was that instead of charging the full cost, that we could actually reduce the cost for smaller arrays.
Good evening, I'm Councilwoman Faust, District 4, and do you have a specific list of those costs? Because you're kind of saying the excess of what, say the permit costs $100. So you're saying we take $4,500 or more, or $5,500, and expend that toward our costs, inspection, etc. Is there a specific itemization? You said it's a flat fee, if I'm understanding. So do you have a list of what those services cost? What is the flat fee? So we could say solar panel number 1 people, it's going to cost them $2,000 for us to do the application and to do the services that we need to do. Do you have anything in writing in terms of the flat fees that you're saying? What are they specifically, and how much do they cost specifically?
Well, they would come up on a case-by-case basis. And that's what we're trying to determine right now. We are basing our ordinance, we are trying to take a whole bunch and figure out middle ground. So that's kind of what we're talking about as far as a workshop goes. We've got, again, some that think it ought to be more, some that ought to be less. We're still waiting to get through this process.
I understand, but to kind of piggyback off of what this gentleman said, he doesn't want to charge exorbitant fees to our people, because there are people, small businesses, the schools, etc. We don't want to charge them exorbitant fees. So if we justify the additional cost, that's one thing. But to say a fluff number like, well, it varies from person to person, I can understand that. But to what extent does it vary? That's just my comment. You may not have an answer for that, but I did you think about that.
Right.
Well, one thought I know that I think came up in the Commissioner's Summit thing was in cost, is if we had to bring in expertise to review before we could actually permit, those are additional costs on us. So do we have like a set down here and then anything above, like additional expertise, research or whatever that we are not capable of handling in our office? Then that would be maybe put on top. Now, that is not spelled out in this right now, from what I can see. I don't think, is there?
Well, I mean, say like you get into a road use agreement, we're getting into the right of ways. Now we've got to have the land surveyed by an engineer and approved by the superintendent. That's not going to be in every project, but that's kind of what that money is out there to cover any of those type of costs. Again, development's going to come up to where is it being, are there wetlands? You know, it's gonna be, depend on where the location is. All of that kind of starts with our office. The application fee comes in, and then we would send drainage board. We would basically send it out to anyone else, the expertise in those areas to okay. Drainage board's currently putting together a checklist. The highway department just gave me back their info. But again, that's part of the discussion. We're kind of in the middle of what everyone else is doing.
Anybody from the solar companies like to speak on the matter?
There's a bunch here.
There's a bunch. Yep. Okay, then, so let's take under advisement the 5,000 and the 1,000. So major commercial, this would be more of your coming in to make a profit to sell to the energy companies to redistribute. So they're actually in business to make power to sell, not to conserve on your own property, offset your own property. So the application fee that we currently got, see if it changed to the, we did bring it down, right? From one proposal was 20,000, we brought it down to 10. Right? Then the megawatt per thing also dropped down.
And the 1750 per megawatt, based off of what we've got up on the screen, that was basically the median from the counties that were checked. One of the things the solar companies would like to see on that is a cap. And again, out of the summit meeting, I don't know if he's here or not, but the solar companies, when we had the original they basically at 2,000 per megawatt put one of our companies that are interested to come in, put them up over $300,000. That basically took Grant County out of the solar game for them. It made it difficult. But one of the comments that individual did speak is that for a solar company, 150,000 to 225,000 is the norm, and that they are comfortable and expecting that type of charge. What we're looking at doing, again, we took it down from the 20,000 to the 10 to reduce to become more friendly, but also down from 2,000 down to 1,750, which again is the median cost. And we are looking to put a cap on those totals, and kind of what should that cap be?
Now, when you have a cap, that means once you've reached this size farm, all additional acres are free. So that encourages mammoth solar farms. Is that what we want to do? I know that's what the solar companies might like, but is that what Grant County wants to do? Would we be better off charging by the acre? If you take this much farmland out of service and erect a new business on it, which is an electric generator, is that the best thing overall? And where it is, close to residents, that would be a negative for anyone close to it. That would be a devaluation of their property. When they went to sell, they would find out how much less they could get for their home. We might be better served to make them pay for each acre. The bigger it is, the more problems there's going to be. Most likely you're going to run into more houses with a mammoth solar farm than a medium-sized one. You're going to have more people that will be against it.
Now, I am seeing some that have different, yeah, that part there that you got, You have different combinations.
Got,
$350 plus $10 per acre.
like I said, you can see what's out there, it's actually, it's all over.
Yeah, and since there's no guidance here from the state, and it is all over the place, then it leaves us up to be Grant County. And we decide what's good for Grant County and its people. I would like to see some of these fees, especially if they get very high on a large solar farm, some of these fees set aside to compensate homeowners that are negatively impacted because they're 250 feet away from the solar panels. Anything less than a half a mile, you're going to see that. It's going to be a detraction to your property. Your property may go down in value. We can have it appraised and find out. There'd be surveys out there that would tell us what's the average evaluation of living right next to a solar farm. It's going to be something. It's going to be a percentage. If we use a portion of those fees to compensate the homeowner for the loss in value, that might go a long way to preventing a bunch of lawsuits. We all can name other counties in the state right now that are sitting in court over their proposed solar farm.
I see where you're coming from. I would say something like that would have to come more through the economic development end of it, because we're here to regulate the land use more so than making judgments on giving money back to people. Now, if there's an economic development, okay, look, you're putting in this big thing that's going to adversely, and part of that whole package, that would probably be something that would go through the county council, through, if they get abatements, whatever, that I would think be handled through that, not through what we do.
Yeah, I mean,
But it would be, yeah.
And I don't exactly, think it has to be here,
Right.
but this is our forum for discussing these issues and doing what's best for the county. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Right. So, I'll just ask the solar farm, how big can you go? What is almost too manageable? Or can you go more than what we would max out at? Something like 100 acres, 1,000 acres, 2,000 acres? What's
I'm Trina Radovich with GNX Solar. I don't know that there's a direct answer to that question, but there are some constraints that we all work within. One being, what can the electric grid take? What is the capacity in any given area? Also, the landowners in the area, their level of interest in participating. We can only build on land where we have a landowner that wants to participate in the project. So those are two of the big constraints over how big something could get in a community. Sorry. I hope that adds a bit of context and helps you guys understand.
What are some of the larger farms being built now?
I know you've seen the headlines about, as you've said, Mammoth Solar up in Pulaski and Stark County. That one is a little over 1 gigawatt. It's substantial. At least my understanding is we're not looking to build at that scale.
So how many acres would something like that entail?
I think there was a newspaper article that it was 13,000, but I'm not directly involved with that project. I can't-
I'm sorry, the acoustics are not very good. What did you say?
13,000
The
acres?
Indianapolis Star reported that one is
13,000 acres?
That one is 13,000. That's not what I believe our projects are talking about. That's certainly not my project. And we're not at the point of bringing a project forward. So we're asking you guys to consider what is right for your community.
Chip, that is right, it's 13,000 stars, that's a good one.
I'm sorry, Mike, again, please. Stark County?
Alaska.
Stars
and Pulaski. Oh, okay.
Stars in Pulaski, yeah.
So what are our limits gonna be?
Well, that's where we're working towards. That's why we're discussing this. Where do we think, how should we handle this? Should we keep the megawatt down so we can have control over whatever side it is and not cap it off? Or do it per acre, a number?
I would like to see you do it by acre, because that's the amount of land taken out of service for farming, and it's in their benefit, the solar companies, to come up with as much power generation as they can on that space. You know, if they upgrade, replace, are we gonna be out there trying to figure out how many megawatts of power they're generating? I don't think that's something we need to try and regulate. But if we do know how many acres we're taking out of service for this farm, and that's what you're gonna pay, then that seems easy compared to how much power do each one of those panels produce, how we total this up, and why do we want to make it harder?
Well, the surprising thing is that there's not more people here, but the rumor is Dan here around that substation there. Two farmers have said, have talked to the company, I don't know if it's this way here, it doesn't matter. And have been offered $8,000 an acre rent for, I think 45 acres, or 45 years. And the response was, this is just secondhand, you know, we'll sign up every acre we own because we're about to retire and we'll move out here and we'll be debt free. Now that doesn't sound right. That's the reason we really need public in to give their opinion on that. I mean, that you could sign up and just pack up and leave your acres all, turn it into a black solar panel. I mean, that's the first thing that was out a month ago, so.
I have nothing against them coming in, but I'm kind of like you. With the farmers, you go to get kind of rich off of it, that you figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's why we need an ordinance, and I'm glad Ryan did it. I think he did a halfway decent job finding everything.
Well, my opinion is I think solar is here, but certainly need a lot of input from the residents, landowners, and everybody, that people can't have the idea that we'll rent it all. I mean, man, we can't make that kind of money. We're close to retirement. And the rumor was the two said they would lease every acre they owned, and they both own over 500 acres. At $8,000 an acre annually.
That's higher than anything I've heard. What have you heard, Brian?
Yeah, that's not.
That's why.
Again, we've got some solar people out there,
Yeah,
very hopeful a month ago.
That seems a little high.
Significantly higher.
Maybe at the end of the 40-year lease or 20-year lease, it might, inflation if they're out, I don't know, or if it's set for the term. I guess it's whatever they agree upon, farmer. And I keep going back, I understand, yeah, we don't want them all over the place maybe, but there are property rights. I mean, people do have, they own it, they bought it.
They bought it as agricultural land.
Yeah.
Solar, electric, generation is a utility.
Yeah.
It's generating electric. It's not agriculture, no way, no shape, no form.
And now, say you use a house, row of houses,
Mhm.
farm ground, whatever you say.
I got one, I got a farm right there.
And I don't know how different people feel different. Some people might not want that behind their houses and, you know, reflection or whatever you get off of it. So that's why I feel like we need an ordinance and we need to regulate it certain ways where making both parties happy. Now, we want solar panels in, but we want to make adjacent owners of near the farm ground, it's going to affect, because just like when we did looking at Twin.
Well, and
We had a few issues about so many feet off property lines. You know, that's why we're supposed to be here, different groups and different ones looks at this.
And that is addressed, and those are issues that have been addressed as far as setbacks, screening, how high a panel can sit off the ground at a certain angle it can't be over. So there are a lot of stipulations, hopefully, to control the aesthetics around if they get close to particular homes. So that is within the thing. It's something we're not reviewing because it's in there. Once we get through these hot items, we can go back through and maybe read through each page and point out different things or questions and things. So what do you think? Should we look towards more per acre, a cost? Leave it at what we currently got there, what seems to be kind of a issue? All right, well,
Oh, I can offer one thing. So I'm with Apex, one of the developers. I will say, so the megawatt factorial that we're talking about, payment of the application for the size of the project, isn't as complicated as you might think. So what you're talking about is production. Kind of the confusing piece would be calculating how much power is generating. It would change over time. It would be unpredictable to some extent, right? Generally, the way we see these project success from a permitting standpoint is installed capacity. So simply how these panels are rated when they're installed. So how much is installed is not contingent upon how well they produce. So for example, the panels might be producing 35% of the time, 30% of the time. Instead, we're saying, well, how many panels are installed? Precisely how much megawattage is there from an installed capacity standpoint, not based on production. So you'll get a higher number, and it'll be absolutely standard. So that's one way to sort of quantify it. That's how most states do it. It would, like you said, though, it would be really complicated to guess at power. Make things a lot tougher. But I just wanted to offer one piece there that might simplify that.
So if I'm hearing right, let's say it's building a 200,000 megawatt farm. That's with all the panels combined, if they're working at optimum level.
Yeah, so when we say we're coming to the county with 150 megawatt project or a 200 megawatt project, that is assuming the panel's operating at 100% capacity at all times, which is what we're saying is that is the absolute maximum that could ever be done. We're never going to hit that, right? But that's something quantifiable, right? at the beginning.
Along with what I said, I'm not against solar, but I don't want it around or on my farm ground, or even where I can see it. You know, I mean, if they want to stick it over there someplace on some land behind the woods, it's fine. I didn't want no windmills, and that's a whole different story. I mean, that turned out different than what the BS they gave them to sign up. So I'm skeptical of these wind people. You know, I mean, they blow a lot of wind, and it's usually 150 times better than what it really is. But I want to be proven wrong. But like I said, I'm not against solar. But I don't care how much per acre rent they would give me. I'd say no, I don't want it.
But before we move on, what do we want to make adjustments here on because it'll be our group that will finalize the thing. I know we don't have much of us here.
No, but I agree with Mr. Hartley as far as these small business. I mean, if I have a
So we should try to bring that down.
If I had a small business, I mean, that would, you know, when I heard about it and the cost and everything, you know, I would turn away from it right away. Too expensive. Especially in this day and age with this administration and with their taxes and everything.
What about for the major commercial, or that they're in the business to do that, that their fees, that they kind of, so the application fee maybe not so much as how do we charge a megawatt per size? To put a cap on it.
I don't know what to say about that after what you said, Ryan, you know, but time, the area plan's gonna have to.
Yeah, on the bigger cases, there's gonna be a lot of time involved in it. Trying to look back here and see, like Delaware County is $350 plus $10 per acre. So I would. But they're giving $4,000 a year per acre for rent. That's ongoing and ongoing or whatever.
They're getting a lot, they've offered a lot more.
Right. So this is a one-time fee.
The farmer can almost get, well, there's one farmer, they can offer $400 cash rent by farm.
So yeah, you're gonna have cash rent.
But, you know, from what these two people have said from the Van Buren area, I mean, it's $800 or $900 an acre rent. Unless the solar people like it, I don't know. There's just a lot of questions out there yet. That's the reason we need, I figured those people would be here.
Brian, what do you think?
Chuck, the question I got from solar panels, we're talking about capping it or not capping it. What are you guys usually seeing when you go around the country putting the solar farms in? Do they have caps or are they not capping you guys?
That's one thing again. That's adult thing again. We've got developments, in quite a few states. We don't often see, actually, you know, when it's done at the state level, we do see caps in certain states. For example, a neighbor here is Ohio. We have, I think, no matter the capacity, you get a ceiling on what the state's going to charge. For example, we have some 200 megawatt wind farms and solar farms that have cost total for both the project itself and for wind generally carries with it transmission line. For all that together, it might cost around $150,000, $160,000. So the cap we're talking about here is just respective of the cost that we're kind of proposing here, right?
Yeah.
So it is when it comes to comparing different states, this is one of the highest we've seen, if not the highest we've seen. And so what we're trying to do is kind of work together to see, you know, what might work, what might not. And from a business standpoint, it's just kind of trying to manage risk, right? So you're entering the permitting process. It's a huge amount of money for anybody, especially when so much is done. You know, we enter the process, and certainly county entities are going to opine and offer recommendations and changes to the designs and how the project works. That might impact whether or not the project does work on our end, right? So it's looking to see if we can meet the middle on it. And honestly, it's just saying that if it is $17.50, I think, per megawatt is proposed, it does land as say double what it would cost a utility scale project in the neighboring state of Ohio. But understanding there's going to be a lot of review, a lot of folks looking into it, it does justify a serious spend on our part. But just wanted to kind of share that with you, and like we've offered in the past, just willing to be creative in how we approach that.
If we did cap it, Ryan, would you still think there'd be enough money to do everything it needs to be done? Like inspection, drainage board, or whatever has to go out there? If they keep getting bigger, you know?
The idea of the cap is over $300,000 are getting out of hand. You know, again, solar companies looking at Grant County, if we're at $300,000 and the next county on the grid is half that, where are you going to go? So, I mean, that's where we again want to be in that range that we're not saying, hey, we don't want to do. So
I know what you're saying there. Because I just want to make sure you guys are covered, so you don't come in the hole.
well, a lot of it's going to be more in the development. So you're getting in the engineering and stuff like that. But even with that, you know, with our office, it scares me to death if we have two of these projects happening at the same time. I don't know how it's going. I don't have to handle it.
And that may need to be looked at for
That's
hiring
our
somebody
slide.
outside to come in and help.
So that's.
And that may be a good use of that.
Of the application fee or the permit fee, if we got to hire an outside inspector or something like that for the project. That should cover it. So leave the megawatts on the major commercial and fee the same, look at reducing the local minor commercial. Got enough notes on that? Make some direction. What's the next one on our list to look at? Economic development agreement. Okay. This is written into the ordinance right now?
Yes.
So basically, this would be kind of out of our, we would want one to be turned in with the application. That's what we're saying.
Well, this was discussed at the summit meeting. It was decided to leave it in. Pretty much what we've got here, the first half that's in black is basically a copy and paste from Randolph County. And what we've added, it was suggested that we possibly pull the county council off of it. In discussion with Shane Middlesworth, he noted that the abatements and TIF requests would still go through the council and suggested that we keep the council in there for that approval. So really, for this was mostly the bottom in red lines, just the wording.
The wording
So
was
that came out of the summit.
from draft 3 to draft 4.
It was, I think Tim and Cherry is here, but it was interesting. Tim had made the statement that a lot of these companies that are coming in and looking at development are wanting to know what type of clean energy is available to them, the renewable energies. And I think Ed had made the point again about, you know, we should consider encouraging new and existing companies to build or upgrade with solar panel roof systems. We don't see that much around here, but in reviewing and stuff, there are a lot of places that are doing it.
So that was just for informational update for actual project development, more so than for planning or permitting or fees. That's something that the county council and commissioners would be having involvement in.
Because the economic development will go more towards the commissioners, while again,
Any
abatements
financial instead of goes through the county. Any discussion on that? Yes, sir.
The economic development agreement can also cover any costs that were incurred by the planning commission outside of the ordinary costs as part of necessary for the project. So that's obviously some negotiations. So that's possible. So first of all, I want to reemphasize, we are seeing the large dollar jobs companies specify clean energy. They're the ones pushing the issue. This county's ability to tax will be at a higher, the land will be a higher rate than was being taxed at in agricultural. I think it's $620 an acre is the assessed value for farmland now, if I remember right. So this will be high, this will decrease everybody's tax rate in Grant County if there's one of these farms coming in, because they, as you know, county government and all governments are limited on what they can spend, and then it's spread over the tax base. So this increases the tax base, it will decrease everybody's tax rates as they come in, even with abatement. But so I think that the fear that this is going to be a loss leader for the county and for the planning commission is not warranted. And
Did I read right on the Mammoth project? Probably all read the same article, but actually that accounted for Pulaski County, accounted for 1/5 of the general fund's income?
Could well be for that kind of number.
Yes. I mean, it was fairly large.
Do we have somebody back here?
Yes. Department, what were the different companies that were interested?
Oftentimes we don't know, we get a consultant that'll just send us a list that says, you know, they have cute names. We're currently dealing with one now called Project Foghorn. Now, they did not specify clean energy, but it's not, well, it's known fact, you're not going to see an Amazon distribution center. You're not going to see any of the Google's data centers, which are really, I mean, they're $65,000 jobs. They're basically saying they're only going to do green energy sites. Now, granted, the one right now, there are some companies who will consider what AEP has because of the Cook nuclear power plant. They will consider that renewable. Not all companies share that view of nuclear power. So,
Were Amazon and Google too that were interested in Grant County?
I have no idea, but they're the ones that have been very public about all their locations. Again, we often deal with, again, like Project Foghorn, or like it's Foghorn. We lost a project, a wire mill that now another company went to Alabama. It was Project Phoenix. So oftentimes, the vast majority of times, we have no idea who they are.
Do we background check any of these companies that are trying to come in here? What would we do on that? Would we do anything?
Well, once we get down to the point where, you know, we start talking dollars and cents, it becomes very clear.
Yeah, we want background check them.
We do. We're in a competitive industry. You know, we've had companies come in. There was a meeting, we had a board meeting, one of the gentlemen that's deciding for the Cafe Valley project, talked about how an uphill battle it was because of certain elements within our community. So, I mean, and that's what we're talking about. I think there's 600 jobs there now. So, I mean, it's, you know, the stakes are high.
We still want background check because there's been companies that come here and they stay by us too, when they're bankrupt or they're gone.
The projects that we work with, when, for instance, the only ones that I know that were bankrupt, for instance, Amcas, when they came here, they were a Fortune 400 company. Some means they were among the 400 largest companies in this country. Now, Echelon Furniture, with the gas city, did not lose money on that, thanks to Mr. Certain. They were able to survive and pay a couple hundred employees for 5 years. A couple hundred of our neighbors.
We still just want to be sure that we get a background check these people.
Well, most of them are publicly traded firms.
Trade firms that have gone down the drain, so we want to make that statement saying just because that to be true, it doesn't make it right.
Excuse me, did you say that those Foghorn specifically because we did not have solar panels?
No, Foghorn is an actual product. I just know what it was cute names we deal with. Dollar General became Project Kodiak. Walmart was a Project.
Was there a company that did not come here specifically because we did not have solar panels?
No.
A lot of these companies, like you said, they come in, they don't want you to know their name, or they don't want it announced to they ask.
Yes.
And they do the groundbreaking day or whatever. They don't like for known to test time.
Charity and I will sign, as well as other people in this room, have regularly signed non-disclosure agreements, which basically are legal commitments that we will not disclose anything that's not publicly knowledge. That's what comes from them. I mean, this is, you know, again, there's, Nestle's almost went to Findlay, Ohio, the facilities in Anderson, except for the newspaper ran a story about their corporate plane landing to do the site visit.
All right. So someone else might say, that's getting business to them after we deal with this, but yes, it's kind of like, it could be a selling point, or it sounds like it's becoming more of a selling point.
Well, and it's also, again, you know, again, my background's finance, the long-term financing and accounting, you need to have commercial development.
Yeah, true. so we don't really need to talk about anything else. That sounds like we leave alone. Drainage board, FYI, drainage board has gotten back to you on what they need, right? Or what they would like to see in the ordinance.
Drainage board is currently working on a checklist for their approval. Kenny's here from the drainage board.
Do you want to speak anything to the drainage board as far as what you're working on, or?
Kenny, do you want to say anything about drainage board?
We want the drainage board to approve the drainage plan, because if they put one of these solar panel farms on top, we've got some main ditches that runs for like 3 miles. And if they would have to put one of these, they're old ditches, 120-year-old, right, Jim?
Right. Large 24-inch tile.
And if they put one of these solar panel farms on top of that, you just can't route out around it. So they're gonna have to check with the farmer, check with the landowner, and what we're running into over there in our area is people's inheriting this ground, and they may live 200-300 miles away. They get a notice of something going on, and they just don't pay attention to it. The guy that's farming it, when they come to us, they need to have the guy that's farming the farm, because he's gonna know where the ditches are, and the owner both approval. The one, there's 5, it goes through 5 different farms, 6 different farms, okay? And if you're on down the way, up the 3rd one down or whatever, and the solar farm goes over you, the top 2 is blocked off. And I've got right here, they took and put a, this is an Oak Hill, they put 2 cables right through the tile, never knew it until you could probably drive a Volkswagen home.
So this is a reason why we need to have rules and regulations. Because Oak Hill went in, said, okay, 35 bucks, we can do whatever we want. Well, this is what happens. So we need to put in, and the drainage board is a key area, is to plan the best they can with what they know is out there. And then if they run into something, to address it as they run into it. So I would imagine on your checklist will be things like, these are known, and then what are you gonna do when we find something that's not on the map?
Who covers that cost?
That would be the developer. Developer, that's part of their thing, right?
Right.
There's a map put by the drainage board that tells what part of them, but some of them are self-funded and may not be on there, so before they come to the drainage board, they're gonna have to try and give us an idea of who owns what, and then we need to check it, make sure that we're getting a gym.
North of Swayze, where the power line runs, is a lot of good flat ground, but we have large old tiles that are 24-inch or bigger in diameter that run at a northwest angle through a lot of those farms. And we have a 75-foot easement from center line of tile each direction. So before any land was leased, somebody would need to check the drainage in that area. Once the tile's full of water, there's large sheet flows of water that runs right through the low ground of some of these. It would look like an attractive place if you didn't question the drainage for solar panels. But water could easily be blocked by them, you know. And the drainage board is reluctant to put a variance on our easement and reduce it. We need that easement to keep it flowing.
So as a developer, you deal with this in all over the place. So you want to address a little bit how you deal with drainage, easements, storm tiles, storm drains.
Sure, yeah, it comes up all over the country, right? So We're aware that a lot of places we build in had really serious draining concerns, right? So you brought up a good point. Where we do see easements for tile coming through, tile mains or county maintained tile, for example, we're going to have, any siding is going to have to be respective of that easement, right? Otherwise, if there's some variance, but I'm guessing, in case, it's going to be case by case, right? Whether it's warranted or not. But generally speaking, and I'm sure I can't speak for every developer, it's going to be our practice to avoid tile mains specifically, just regarding impact. But separately, you're right. We're going to map tile as best as we possibly can, identify the mains, identify the ditches, but some tile for a panel housing is going to hit some drain tile. It's just bound to happen, right? Not everything's mapped, and like you said, sometimes you just have really old tile that's down there. When we do hit tile, we're obligated in our agreements to fix that tile, reroute the tile for as long as the project is here. So we do lifetime guarantees for our projects for impacts to tile, for the reason that you might not identify that there's a problem for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years, until it gets particularly wet. You say, look, we didn't see this impact, we didn't know we hit something, but we're the only one who's come through and torn things up, so we're going to go ahead and fix it. So that's something we require in our agreements, and something we can talk about folding into the ordinance too, right? We're talking about sort of setting standards, like the folks at the BZA are asking, who's liable. The development company should be liable for any drain tile impacts. That's something that's standard across the industry, and certainly we're comfortable folding in.
More and more of this farmland is tile every 50 foot. And today, how's that gonna work with the solar out through there?
He was saying that a lot of the farmland is getting drain tiles like every 50 feet to drain out land to certain areas. You just have to.
To me, it looks, it's just.
You're not getting into pattern tile, what you're talking about 50-foot pattern tile. That's the thing, that hadn't been around 5 or 6 years. So what you're getting into is back in the old days, the old timers took and put in main trunk lines. Similar to a river. I mean, it's a 24 or 30-inch tile. And they knew what they was doing because they could hit grade pretty well. And what he's saying is you can go out around one of these solar farms, you can't necessarily get the grade to drain the water, okay? So on our creeks and so forth, there's a 75-foot easement on each side of it. There should be at least a 75-foot easement on each main tile, okay?
Well, I think that came up with some of the charged ones, the big ones, where they're at. And they know to stay away from them as best they can. But if they hit a smaller one that's feeding into that's not mapped or aware of, you either move your panel over or reroute that line to go to continue the flow in that area that's been damaged. So it looks like they have to do their due diligence to see if they can make it happen.
From the farmer's standpoint, it appears with a 75-foot easement there, like on Boone Road and Black Creek and all those, it looks to me like that it's just about impossible to put solar in the area.
Well, near one of the big lines, I would think it'd be challenging.
Yeah.
But that's their business, that's what they would have to determine, talking to whoever their potential farmers are.
That's the reason I say we need to.
Would even that be concern of us, that'd be more the drainage board, wouldn't it?
Yes, the drainage board, yes. Part of the ordinance would say they need to complete whatever the drainage board requires to turn in for their permit. Right. Yeah, we would not make that call as well. The drainage board would control that.
A lot of these tile needs replaced.
Yes.
But it takes a lot of money, you know. We was just in one here a while back that, took 800,000 to replace it. And so it takes, you're raising farmers' ditch assessment to get the money up.
Right.
And,
They said they're responsible for it, they did it like you.
Well, I know, maybe we should give them some false information, then they'll be replacing all the ditches for us. No, yeah, that. Highway department, they're working on issues, or what's?
David brought in David White brought in his changes to it,
Okay.
today.
So once again, need some other training for it, anything related to highway egress and entrances or whatever, it would have to be approved through the highway department, right? What their standings are. And I think that is, there might be a map in there somewhere that kind of gives some setback issues.
Basically, kind of what David added into it, if I can get down to it, was again, we talk about surveying into right-of-ways and stuff like that, that it would be the responsibility of the solar farm energy system. So he added, number 6, as far as the right-of-way or personal property survey is needed. Solar farm energy system shall pay for the cost of such survey. And I believe he also added if an engineering and consulting firm is required for approval for the oversized load permits, solar farm energy system shall pay any and all costs required firm, of the county highway department superintendent's choosing. So that was his additions. Other than that, highway department was good with
Language, just add a little bit. So once again, they'll have to go to the highway department, get all their checked off, and make sure that before they, that would be issued. We are up to the next bullet point is revisions to approved development plans. So I'm assuming, so let's say we had issued an approved one, and they wanted to make revisions. What do we do?
right. So regardless of the route we go, if I get that, there we go. So if they come in with a development agreement that is approved, and should they make changes, what is the route? Kind of the example I would give, if you are in a commercial construction, you've got to have a commercial design release, a CDR. If you vary from that, it generally has to go back to the state and get reapproved again. For these, we had talked at the summit meeting and talked about doing the maximum extent boundary, basically saying that this is going to be within this amount of area, and that any minor changes in there would kind of be filled in. If they extended outside of that barrier, then it would come to us. So the question would be, like the BZA currently has, if it is a 10% change, that is something that our office can do at office level. Anything considered a minor difference, anything bigger than that has to go in front of the BZA. Do we want to set forth something that says if it is going to be more than this, it has to come back through the process? So that's the question I'm asking is.
Well, we kind of talking about like when they put a solar field in, and I said it's gonna be in this square area.
Yeah, X number.
And just like I heard at the last summit meeting.
Right.
Solar panels are getting better and better. And say I want to put so many kilowatts and it ends up being more for solar. Is that what you're saying they should bring back to us, or?
Let's say they had 50 panels, but they're still within the original boundary.
X number of acres.
Yeah,
If they go
so
outside that now.
if they add 50, is it okay for them to come and say, hey, you know, we're gonna add 50 panels over here, but we're still within the boundary? Is it okay for me to say, that's fine, that's my variance? But if they come back and say, hey, we're gonna add 100 acres over here,
That's
different.
Well,
Or
different.
Then you come.
Because the panels might become smaller over the years, or, and they can put in more panels in that little.
Acreage footprint.
So that is a discussion that we had previously, but never really came to a, okay, here's what we want.
I'm kind of, like, if they're staying, let's say it's 100 acres, for example, they stay and they can figure out a way that they get a little bit more put in there because of the way it's laid out, they're probably all right.
As long as they-
Now, if we're charging by the
as long as
kilowatt,
they
the
stay
kilowatt
from
volume
the-
goes up.
Yeah.
Do
As
we
long
get a
as,
little more
as long as
fee
they're not
out?
outside that perimeter of what they actually said.
Do we get a little more fee, or it's just, or, you know, it's just what I originally approved for?
Depends on how you charge.
Depends on how you charge. But I would say, yeah, I'm kind of leaning that if it's within, let's say, the number of acres they originally planned on, with X number of things in. Well, you know, let's say they lease 100 acres, they only develop 50 of it. They come back and want to put in another 50 acres.
Well, the permit would only be for 50 acres.
Well, but they leased out 100, it's going to be put over the 100 acres, and they don't use all of it right away. And then they're going to continue to add on.
They're not gonna use it all right.
No, maybe not.
Well, it'll still be available to them. if
Yeah,
they-
whatever it permits for.
Whenever they got ready to do it.
Permitted and more.
Just like we say, you can put electronics here, we give you permit, and it takes you, say, 5 years to come up with the money to put that like, that's what they're doing, you know. They're like waiting for some money.
So that's, you know, basically here is our maximum, this is Dalton, or maximum extent boundary. So as long as they're within that, and not making major changes, we are okay without stopping the process and saying, okay, we're good.
But this is going out of the scope. And I guess they wouldn't be wanting to pay rent on a lot of acres they're not going to use. So I guess they wouldn't over-rent for a project. Would that be a fair assumption that you wouldn't go 200 acres when you only need 100 acres? Do what you're doing.
Correct.
Well, that's not what they're doing.
Well, no, I mean, they may rate 100 acres, but they're not going to use all 100 there. Looks like he has some more input there.
Yeah, I think it's worth adding some context, just kind of color what the development looks like. So I think we're on the same page, high level, where what we submit to the county is going to be, like Brian said, maximum extent, where we say, we're working on a design. Obviously, every entity that's reviewing this project is going to opine and maybe change what we're proposing. So that's kind of the flexibility we're truly building in, is to say, we'd like it to look like this. Here's our design. We might get changes from the county. There might be a change in efficiency, like you said, between the start of review and the end of review, that kind of make really minor changes within that. But like you said, if we go outside of that boundary, that's going to be more serious, right? To your final question there about over-leasing, we've got to try to design the project based on the constraints, not only that we work through with the county, but environmentally, from an engineering standpoint, from a realism standpoint. When we're talking about drain ditches, easements, the tile mains, and features, say wetland features that we're working around. We've got a lot of different things curtailing where the panels can go, and then we're going to decide some extra ones with the county. So we are going to start with a larger leased ground. And by the time we come to the county with an application with a preliminary design, that's going to be as close as we can get it to what we think we're doing. So we're not going to present to you double what we think we're going to need, only because we're trying to be as realistic as possible. with the review, there might be some minor changes. And so I appreciate kind of going through the thought experiment of it, but I don't think you're gonna have a case where we say, you know, show you panel design on half and then this massive area that we might put panels in. Very likely what we're gonna present to you is, here's our design, here's the area that design fits in. And any minor changes you request, hopefully we can make that work.
Well, who is it? I don't know if you or who. Did you speak to any of the farmers over in the Van Buren area?
And you're right. No.
Oh, I wonder. You guys. Well, they were gonna rent 1,500 acres. So I mean, they laid it out and proposed that.
They might have shown someone an area of interest that was that long. That's generally how developers start. They say, where's the transmission line that has capacity? It's more rare than you might think, where you have capacity for a solar project. And you say, well, we're going to look within this area. And the project sort of shrinks over time until it's effectively shrink wrap around the design. If you start with a bigger area and you study, the project just gets smaller and more detailed as you go. So they might have shown someone, especially really early on, a larger area, like you said, it's going to shrink over time. That's possible. I guess I wasn't there though, so I'm not sure.
Well, that's what they've been told.
Okay.
I've got a question. Well, go ahead. I've got a question.
Okay.
What happens if one of these farms say they're bought out by another company?
There is something in here about succession or selling of the property.
Yes,
Notification.
that permit doesn't go with that new company. They start all over with everything.
All you need if they
Yeah,
change
say
hands
this
through the
company's bought
process,
out
not
by
after it's
another-
done.
Right.
Well, once it's already done, then it would be notification to our office. The solar farm would already be present.
Right. What I'm saying is that new company doesn't take over where these people left off. No.
You're talking about commit construction?
Right. Well, don't say they come in and say they buy her company. Okay, she's gone. His stuff's still here. The new people are they going to say, we're just going to continue what she put in place?
I would think like anything, the contract, if a company bought you out bid project, whoever buys that contract and that company should be obligated to honor all contracts.
It's essentially business entity.
Right.
It'd be no different than getting bought by
Rules we
Amazon.
already did the first
Right.
What's that?
time. They would be liable, if we set rules for the first. one,
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
And
second.
that first company sells out,
Right.
say, 5 years down the road,
Yep.
somebody else. The new company would be liable
I would
for the
put that.
same, whatever we set for.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I
what I'm
would
saying,
agree.
that you want to let them know that what
We
follows
got
and
it.
what doesn't follow the people.
If that happens, then we have to. So that is an ordinance.
Also, what about if, say the company quits, bankrupt or whatever, who removes these panels and they are recyclable? Who takes care of that?
We do have a decommissioning plan in place in the ordinance, and all of that would be settled prior to ever issuing a permit.
Who takes care of the financial part of that?
Well, that's one, I had it going through the ordinance, those are some of the things I pointed out. Some of the things we're not specifically discussing, the highlight things here is the mechanics of it. So like, yeah,
Well, we want to get some answers to them before this thing gets going.
Lois, I can answer that one.
Go ahead.
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
Right? So it is industry standard for a company that's doing the development to place a bond or financial assurance that decommissioning will be taken care of. So that would fall to the project, and something that should be built into the ordinance.
right, so yes, whether it's an escrow account that holds the money,
Yeah,
or
the
a
type-
bond
the type-
out there, and
yeah.
it's
Put a
done.
bond out there.
Right, and then when the project is done, and everything's gone, and they didn't use any of the money, they get that money back.
Exactly, that's right.
So upfront, they either, I guess there's a guesstimated cost of how much it would take to take it away.
Yeah.
And that's what you put out to the side.
And generally what's done is it's not the company estimating. We'll put together a plan. We say this is what we think it's going to cost based on our folks. Generally, folks that are reviewing our projects will either hire an engineer in state that does this sort of work for a living to say, here's how much I estimate it costs. So you go with the number that.
And then that money's put off to the side.
That's right.
Alex,
Do you actually recycle these panels? Or do you have an engineer take them to a landfill?
Panels generally, yes. Steel as well, the foundation pieces, yes. But it all depends, right? So there are going to be aspects that are unrecyclable, aspects that are. Especially as it pertains to the industry as a whole, because we're having more and more solar projects built. By the time this is going to be decommissioned, I assume that even the recycling options are going to be that much more developed as well. So, that's what we're counting on. We generally build that into our decommissioning plans as well, to say, here's the plan of recycling and how.
That will offset the cost of tearing it out.
Yeah.
So that is in the ordinance.
Excuse me, do you know how much it costs to recycle,
I don't.
like Walmart?
I don't. Sorry. I don't want to give you an estimate if I can't stand that. I'm sure it would be expensive to do so.
Oh, it would be.
I'm sure there would. Especially if it's we're talking about a project that takes, tens of acres or 2,000 acres. That's a lot of panels.
Yeah, the Harvard Business Review says recycling is much more costly than dumping. We would like to make sure they're recycled. There's going to be millions of these when these begin to expire.
The other thing to be mindful of is the recycling industry around this is still very young. As it matures, it will get a lot more cost effective. So there will be more incentive for us to continue doing that. Plus, with the steel, the aluminum, the salvage value of those panels incentivizes us not to dump them.
Yeah, I could see the steels and other metals could be good, but the actual glass panel seems to be the problem with recycling, the costly part of it. It's not just glass. There are heavy metals. There are other toxins that I'm not really familiar with, but maybe you are. But those have to be dealt with.
Correct. And that one is on us and should be part of the decommissioning plan.
Okay.
With the emphasis on recycling as much as possible.
Landowner better have a good attorney. Because this company that easily does it will probably sell 3 or 4 times and then
Before it expires.
Yeah.
Course of life.
it's just like wind turbines.
Yes, sir.
Go back to the part we were just talking about where they put in so many panels and then they can find out they can put more in that later period and say some comforts and whatever they have. What do you, and I didn't see it here, about the permitting procedure as far as how long, right now we get permits and we're going, they have to start within 180 days and this. Have you given any thought as to if they have a permit to do this area right here, and then 4 years from now, they decide to add additional panels there, is that permit still going to be good for that 4 years from now? Or are you going to do like the state does and say, you have so long to do this, and you know what I'm saying?
It's actually in here.
Is it? I didn't see it.
Basically, anything beyond the original development will require a permit.
Where are you at?
We'll have to let me find it. Other structures. We're on page 11. After permitting fees, this would be section B. Any other structures associated with the project outside of the original development plan shall require a separate improvement location permit and permit fee required by the appendix.
A lot of detail involved. There must be money in it. Okay, so that answers that question. we go back to the next line item. Uh-oh, yes.
Okay, so on page 16, number 7.
16. Yes.
Number 7 says, if the owner or operator of the solar facility fails to remove the installation in accordance with the agreement, then it says, and it goes on, it says an area plan commission may collect a surety. Where does that surety come from?
I think that's what we were just talking about before. They'll put a bond or some type of money in escrow that will cover decommissioning the project.
Okay, so you would already have that.
There'd be finances set aside somewhere
You
that
would already have that agreement to know where to go.
to get it. That would
That's,
be,
that would be part of the decommissioning plan before we ever got started.
Before you got started.
Right, and they're gonna give us estimates. Now, something we may look at, there are some jurisdictions out there that review that every 5 years, to make sure that we keep up with it, but again, the fear becomes with our department is remembering in 5 years and having the time to keep up with it. So that's something that I would like to do, to be able to review that. I don't know that we would actually have the time to keep up with it.
we just need to have the adequate funds in there. Probably more than enough. All right. Back to that. Left revisions. We talked about revisions. We have to go back through.
That's driveway access.
Driveway access, we talked about that, I think, with highway department, right?
With this, the highway department, David White said either way was fine with him. It didn't seem like a priority. Soil conservation basically said they would like to keep it, but would go with whatever the highway decided.
So I think that was just having blacktop or hard surface off the main road so far, and then it can go to gravel, which would be better for drainage rather than hard surface.
And not all these are rocket science, some of them are just question marks.
Okay, setbacks. There is a diagram up there. Made it into the packet. The diagram should be in the back. It might have. I printed out so many different things. There we go. So how we come up with these? Is it a combination of areas?
So, again, when we talk about trying to go down the middle of the road, there are several ordinances out there that are less, and there are several ordinances out there that are more, and some that are quite a bit more. So this is kind of trying to meet somewhere down the middle on the setback.
When I look at 250 feet from the actual solar panels to a non-participating resident, that seems very close to me.
I agree.
That just seems really close. I would like to see us better protect the people of this county than that.
Delaware County is 250, and I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying, example, Jay County is 150.
These things are big. You're allowed to be 20 feet tall, right?
At maximum tilt.
At maximum tilt.
And that's also set in the flat.
Look at the ceiling in this room. It's about double that. You're gonna see these things.
But it's also setting behind a 25-foot buffer, 6-foot screening.
6-foot screening, 20 foot high.
Put in at 4 foot, 6 foot.
You see what I'm saying?
Fence
Solar
is
glare.
6 foot.
The sun hits these. No, I think it's way too close.
So you really don't want
No, I wouldn't say I don't want
I
it,
want the parking
but
lot.
I'm saying where we choose is a big part of it.
So if we go to Randolph County, again, that's the one that's 48 pages and one that's talked about throughout the state. Their residential use for non-participating is 220. So, you know, again, it's 250, and again, these are just 200.
And you said some of them are much larger.
What's the largest one, if you remember, it was like 1,000?
What's the population of Randolph County compared to the population of Grant County?
I mean, some of them are 300. I've got Howard County, Randolph County, Jay County, and Delaware County, so surrounding areas. So that's their setback. I put it at 250. Compared to there, we're on the high end on the 250. I know that sounds close, but again, this is something that's trying to go down the middle of what's out there.
I understand that.
Well, this is like,
still think it's really close.
So you're saying it needs to be more, you're probably saying it needs to be more. This is for a neighbor that's not part of the project.
I'd say 1,000 feet.
I put everything back to football fields, so that's a little over 3 football fields, right? 900 feet.
That's 900.
Yeah, that's 900, so it'd be a little more than 3 football fields.
That'd be fine.
That's all I had back there.
I just thought we have enough farmland that we could put them where if somebody has put their life savings in a home because they love Grant County and they love looking at the cornfields and the bean fields, put it where they can't see it, half a mile. I saw one county, like they wouldn't put one any closer than a half mile to a park. I assume because they want the people to enjoy it, but if somebody's living there all day, you know, all night, and that's their home, I think we should be respectful of that.
It would definitely bring the property value to them.
But to have a bigger setback, like, would maybe lessen that impact then.
I think it's got to lessen
The impact.
resistance in the
Yeah.
community and be more acceptable. I mean, that's not even 250 feet from the fence.
Right, that's
The
from the
property
actual
line.
structure.
I mean, there's 50 feet to the property line, and then there's that other buffer area. And that comes out of the 250. It just seems very close. For as big as these things are.
How far is Madison Grants from the highway? I drive by it all the time.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, I hardly know
Yeah.
it's there.
Where's the
But it's
gas city?
small.
Do you notice where the gas city one is?
The Gas City one's very hard to see.
The one there inside.
They're not 20 feet tall either.
Yes, they are. They tilt up to 20.
If you didn't have like a tree where it looks, you would never know if you drive by it. Many times, because they hit it down along that creek and that little unused piece of land that they could use, put solar in.
But tell that to somebody that's building a brand new house.
Unless
that
you really
costs
look, you would
$450,000.
never know it's ever there.
Right.
Well, that's
But tell that
saying
to
what-
somebody that's building a house that's $450,000.
On the other side of the creek, there is apartments and there is a house there.
You said housing, not one person house.
Comment from the audience?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a little farther away, but, can we consider putting natural buffer as a requirement?
Well, that's part
Like
of it, right?
trees?
Yes.
Yeah, there will be a 25-foot buffer.
Like,
Coming.
what?
It
A
could be
natural
earthen.
buffer or just a,
If there is a non-participating property next to it, there are evergreens, trees at 4 foot that'll grow up to 6 foot, plus a 25-foot buffer, plus a fence. There is
so the
buffering.
natural buffer is already in there?
Yeah, it is.
Is it 25, what'd you say, 20?
It is page 12,
Page 12?
buffer and landscaping / ground cover.
Even with a buffer, that's gonna be a real distraction.
Well, I think that's what they were talking, some of them like AEP and, some of them are there, yes,
It's already
you
there.
drive by it and you never see it, unless you're looking.
Yeah,
And
get them a little.
some of them like Oak Hill and Madison Grant, there is no buffering screening, they put fences up and there they are. So,
Once again, regulations so they can do whatever they want. If it's in place, and at least get some growth, and hopefully camouflage, for lack of better words. I do kind of agree that 250 seems a little short to me. I don't remember what the solar or the wind farms were, but and maybe it's being a small town, I can see where, let's say you put a larger perimeter around incorporated towns. I don't think that, let's say it's a half mile around incorporated entities. Yeah, I don't think you do that for every farmhouse out there, because you never have a spot to put something. You make a choice of where you build a house. I know, yes, you put a lot of money in and you build, when you're building out in an agricultural area. Granted, this was supposedly all agriculture, and now you got something like this coming in. So I weigh them out. You're out there where things could potentially change. But
Question I got, Chuck, you just said solar panels in this kind of ring of fountain. We say 250 feet is for a solar panel. Well, if I'm the neighbor next to them and I got enough room to add a garage for that solar field, that would stop me from building my garage because it's not 250 feet.
I think you get into non-conforming legal.
Because that sounds, we were kind of talking about solar, if they didn't have a building over there, how you could be closer when we did solar, looking at the windmills and different things. And that's why I wondered if they decided to build a garage, say that was to the west of their house, they got enough land, could they still build a garage, because you're saying 250 feet?
Change it to property line and not the actual dwelling. If you own 10 acres out there, but they want to build, you go to your property line instead of to your actual home.
Yeah, but you look at this is saying from the house. It's good, that's why I'm questioning, could they be in under that 250? And that's property, so you're saying, say with Ed here, and his neighbor put a solar farm there, and he wants to build a garage. Like what this is saying, that we make special stamps, they would never be able to put a garage in.
Generally, what we do on the development side, the setbacks we see are a one-way setback. For solar, for wind, for anything like that, where we can't encroach on a certain distance that's decided, right? But there's nothing preventing someone within their own property rights to do something like that. The farmers included, so they can build whatever they want up to our fence as long as it can be locally approved, right? There could be some way to assure that this is a one-way setback. This is a restriction on the developer and not on local folks. I can kind of figure that one out.
Because I didn't want to stop you guys from building, and I don't want to stop the owners over here from building.
All right, so what, if they build, and you got your solar panels in, if they want to add a garage closer to that they can do that. But as long as that garage is there before, it says, participate.
If it was there before, they would just have to move it back another 250 feet from the garage.
Right.
Or come see us and get a variance.
Yes, I mean, in context, this is a restriction on the developer requesting a permit from the county, right? So this is not a restriction on zoning for someone who lives in the county. This is a package for developers, right? As long as it's in this document and not in the general zoning for folks, that they're not being restricted.
I didn't want to stop the neighbors from being able to, if they
Right.
had enough room.
One of the problems you got here, they'll come in and lease up a 100-acre farm. When they come in, they're not gonna put in a 100-acre solar farm. They're gonna put in a 30 or 35-acre solar farm someplace in that farm, okay? Most of the farmers want it over towards the corner someplace or out of the road. So that, you got electric cables there. If you want to ditch or anything, you can. Well, you can, but you gotta dig them. Come up to them and dig them up behind. If they take the whole 100-acre farm, right, solar panels on the whole 100 acres, that's not bad.
Everything needs to go up a little bit though,
Yeah,
for a non-participating dwelling. 250, you said 1,000, that may be too much.
I think that's too much, but I just don't want to hurt the neighbors, because I like to see them come in, because that's money for the county, and they're gonna make money to the county. But I don't want to offend the neighbors with saying, because they come in, it's gonna affect you,
But that's less than an 8 mile. I mean, you're only looking from our town hall, we're only a half mile to country. So, I mean, I can imagine, just right outside of our town, have solar panels all the way around it. At the next street over. I mean, that's all you're talking is a block. A city block is what? 1/10 of a mile, usually? That's 500 feet?
It's something we gotta keep in context too, just from the development standpoint. So 250 feet, the number we see there is fairly standard in the industry. So that wouldn't surprise us. It's kind of why we did not comment on it. Once you get to a certain limit, we're talking about 1,000 feet, that would effectively be the moratorium on solar. That's the kind of thing where you're saying, we're stranding on that farmer's farm, like Kenny was saying. You're either stranding that acreage from him, where you've got to maintain it, and maybe he can't farm it, or you're saying that the project needs to sit in this nugget in the middle of a farm, and you've got to incorporate that many more farms. So you end up with a far greater project area. And so what we're trying to do is sort of compromise with all the interests, right? We're talking about buffering. Where we have homes, make sure there's that buffer that we're talking about. Make sure that we're meeting these setbacks. Make sure that we're trying to incorporate those as best we can. And separately, also making sure we're with the farmer too, where it's of course his interest to maximize. How can I make sure that if I give you this farm, it's going to be productive for me, and that I'm not stuck with these slivers of farm that I have to find a way to produce on. So we've got to make sure we have both of those interests in mind, and maybe even framing it rather than talking about just sort of arbitrarily duplicating or quadrupling a setback. Talk about the impact. If we're talking about, say, a visual impact, what is that? We're talking about a sound impact, we're trying to minimize, what is that? Those are studies that we can do in the development side to demonstrate whether, for example, you can hear an inverter from about 50 feet away during the day, or whether you can see the turbines, and whether screening is useful there. So I think that might be a bit more of a scientific way to kind of go about it, rather than duplicated, quadrupling setbacks that may only serve to make it more challenging and not really provide a benefit at the same time.
And again, like I said, Delaware County, 250. Jay, 150. 200. Randolph County, 220. So, Howard, 150. So in the county's bias, 250 is great compared to a lot of the counties close to us.
Thank you. Just to give you an answer, a city block is roughly, I looked at, I Googled, it's 311 feet, so here again, a reference a football field. Awful close in my estimation. I don't want to live to that. It's not our problem. You guys need to protect the citizens of Credit County. So that's what your main focus should be. Now, do the setback whatever you want to be. I would suggest at least 600 feet, if not more. Make it their problem if they can. Protect the citizens of Grant County first.
Well, the thing of it is, to actually establish a setback, we need a consensus from the residents and everybody in Grant County to do it. And I'll guarantee you, it would be a large setback. And most of it would be one law.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, we're not gonna please everybody, but we gotta make something where we're not gonna run them off.
Right.
But help the neighbors next door out, that's what I'm looking at.
So if we
Because I don't wanna run them off.
So if you keep it like at 250, we need to ensure that the screening is definitely adequate, or maybe it needs to be more.
Well, you know, just keep it at 250, incorporate what Dalton said, because you're never going to, right here, you're setting up abstracts without knowing, again, no one can see the gas station site. Why? Because of the nature of the site. So setbacks have to reflect the, you know, what's the surroundings. If, you know, so you can do the study laid out, which is bring professionals in, people that actually know what they're, you know, and they have licenses that put their insurance behind it. And said, okay, here's the impact, and visually they will not see this, they will not hear the actuators and that. So therefore, you're not randomly choosing a number that's not workable for some reason. Again, if you're thinking about the long-term health of Grant County, the financial impact is there. Your cap, the assessed value on farmland is increased, what you're gonna get out of this. So it's a balancing act. I think Dalton, Apex, suggestion makes a whole lot of sense because it recognizes that every piece of land in Grant County is not identical.
So we could go to 250, provide the studies and topographic or whatever shows proper screening for that. So we can incorporate that into the language.
I want to say something. The guy that spoke from Warren, I think he's right. My front yard, I live on 5 acres. Our house sits in the middle.
Yep.
250 feet, my yard to the street. I wouldn't want a solar panel sitting right there. So, no, it needs to be increased, and increased a lot, 600, 700 feet, because that's just too close. It is just too close.
And you mentioned that Dane County has this really short, what would you say, 100?
Huntington County. Yeah. Randolph County has
What did you say Dane County was?
J County is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
10. Their ordinance is 10.
No, they're talking about setbacks.
Oh, setbacks, sorry.
Yeah, there's setbacks for Dane County, sorry.
150 feet for non-participating.
And my daughter lives in Jay County, so I drive through it a lot. And there are signs, no solar farms, no solar farm. It's because they're so too close.
And they actually with that, and I don't know, there's someone sent me an article, Jay County just approved, like this past week, 2 more additional solar farms.
Yeah, and their people are upset. And I agree, you gotta protect the citizens. You gotta protect the citizens. Yeah, there comes a time, I agree with Tim, there comes a time where it's economics is involved. But you also gotta protect your citizens.
And I agree with that. Like I said, what we tried to do was go down the middle of the road And at 250, knowing that that was going to be a possible issue, at 250 compared to surrounding areas, we were on the high end. I mean, that can obviously change, but compared to our surrounding areas, 250 is high.
All right, we have somebody else with their hands up.
I just wondered if they would have like some ideas, like how we could get the word out to people, like if that is a concern that I think they don't know. Could we get it in the Chronicle Tribune? Someone would be able to do that, like on the front page or something? Because I don't really think people know.
I don't know if the Chronicle Tribune is here today. Are they here today?
I just think the county has asked them to do things before, and they would.
Remember, we're doing fact finding here.
Yeah.
Our goal would be,
And like he said, with their shut, some grounds, they're gonna probably be more than 250 feet. Because there's a creek, something else, that's gonna make them to move in.
and I think the solar panels also have to be so far back from their actual property line or whatever they're doing, right? So,
I still say 500 feet, start there.
or you start at the 250, and if the surveying and the people that know, the screening says, well, this isn't gonna give them enough protection, then on that particular property, you may have to go a little more.
Right.
But if the right buffering, banking, shrubs or whatever, trees, and the professionals say, you're not gonna hear whatever noises put off. You're not gonna see the, whatever, that bushes get so high or trees grow in 3 or 4 years or whatever. Maybe we should incorporate something like that. And if it doesn't meet those guidelines to protect them at 250, then they would need to adjust. I think we have somebody back here.
Yes, thank you. I understand you benchmark with those other numbers, 250, 150, so forth, but the good thing is we have the liberty here in Grant County to charter our own territory. That gave you a general idea, so I don't want to be stuck at 250. 250 is not what we want, and that's not going to work for our citizens, so I just want to say that. Thank you.
Believe me, from the beginning, I put this down the middle and said, take it where you want to go.
650 is a great number.
And we, the idea was to get something in place to get it to public hearings. I mean, that was really, so we talked about getting it out to the public, like this was published for tonight, and the commissioners meeting, the commissioners' solar summit meeting was published. The public hearings will also be published, and they'll be out here, so that we've got plenty of room.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
When we get to the public hearings, it'll also be published, and we'll have it out here and on WebEx, so that everyone is welcome to come and give their input.
I still know people who illegals are about this big in the paper, and so I know there are people who go through illegals and really what that means.
Remember, all you're doing tonight, and when you adopt it, is setting the roadmap for how the project will be handled.
Right.
Once there's sufficient acreage option, they will come forth, there will be notices, and there will be signs go up on properties and things like that. So at that point, you will have a resident saying, that 250 doesn't work for me. You will have a resident that says, oh, that 250 works for me. The adjoining property owners will have notification. There will be, we're spending a lot of time ignoring the property rights of the farmer leasing the land. There's not a gun being placed in that it's a free market transaction. He's making a decision. It actually has larger environmental impact because the land is in essence being land banked, so it'll be returning to its native state in terms of things. So, let's think what we're doing tonight. This is about setting the ground rules for when a project actually comes together. And recognizing that we have, you refer to the Chronicle Tribune, I read almost every day about how the county shorted money for central dispatch. And this is, you need to figure out how the county's gonna have additional revenue. This becomes additional revenue. I This is real world, guys.
But the revenue at the expense of folks in that business here, that's not good.
Well, you can have a sheriff's department.
Anyway, but you need revenue, you need to see what the people want. You want to know what the people want.
This is a representative of democracy, not even.
Right.
So you do make a good point there. We make all these into an ordinance. A company comes and wants to develop, and they will also have a public hearing.
2 public hearings.
Potentially. Well, yeah, well, because it goes before, well, depends on what route we go, but it would be 2 basically, for public input, neighbors, and at that time, because it affects known properties, they are definitely notified.
Are there any attorneys here?
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay.
I confess.
What did you want, right here, this gentleman, this is Sue.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to make sure that if we have some legal questions that need to be asked, you know, because that's the person that can answer these questions, not just lay people like us, you know. Especially when you're talking about that 50 feet, 75 feet, because I was, well, this may be a different situation, but AEP wanted to come in 50 feet on my property. But they told me that there was a house sitting there. They said if that house burnt down, I could not rebuild that property on that same spot because of that 50 feet easement. And my attorney told me that.
Well, that's different.
Yeah.
Different circumstance altogether. They actually own that, they bought that easement from the previous landowner.
No, there was no previous.
In 18, when they put the power line in, well, once they put power line in easement, they work.
Yeah. So that's why I want to know if there's an attorney here, because it's questions like these and more. There are a lot of these agricultural farmers that are going to be in here, and these people need to know the information right straight up before they go sign these papers thinking they're getting a good deal and find out, you know, you just sold the farm to them or whoever. So,
It's always bad when you have to worry about, I just sold the farm.
Okay, we got okay, all right, let's, we're starting to get late here, we got a gentleman.
Sure. Just another comment. You know, this meeting was tonight to discuss developing an ordinance.
Right.
So once an ordinance is developed, passed before your different boards and so forth.
Right.
Passed before the county and so forth. It may be too late for that landowner to say, wow, it's only 250 feet, I want to dispute that. No, hey, I've got an ordinance. I'm within my rules. How, you know, you may be able to dispute that, but I don't know how much leg you're going to have to stand on because there's already been an ordinance created. So
that's why we publish ordinance for public hearing, follow the guidelines, and that's when people can come and ask or question, and recommendations or changes could be made before it's forwarded on to the next body.
You know, right, but once that ordinance is passed,
yes,
it's set.
It is set as a guideline, and like stated earlier, a developer comes in, they assess it, and if they see something that maybe isn't quite right, they'll either have to adjust or ask for maybe a variance or.
But we ain't gonna make the final decision on this. This is gonna, ain't we sending this back to the commissioners?
Right, we are the agent to formulate the ordinance to send it to the commissioner.
So, if people really have to complain what we come up with, they need really to go to the commissioners and do their.
They have the final say.
So, all we did is take what they told us to look at, tell them what's good and bad, and then they're gonna make the final
Right.
decision.
They're the one that'll make the ultimate decision, and they'll probably make the ultimate decision.
That's what the public needs to know.
No, okay, it's gonna go back to the commissioners. They're what you need to talk to.
I don't think we can make a recommendation on this here, but I think you feel from the consensus of a lot of people that 250 seems pretty short distance, and that you should probably push that up to the commissioners and talk about a bigger setback.
That or making sure we have some language in there for noise and screening to be adequate for that particular adjacent property owner.
I think the footage would be better. That's number one.
Yes, screening's definitely good.
So then a house is in the property, I mean, that's a farmer.
Yeah,
I guess they can do what they want for 100 feet.
Yeah, if he's giving them the land.
Yeah, I guess it's almost anything for me, if they're willing to do it. Any other questions about setbacks? Or we can maybe try to make adjustments up a little bit, or make sure we have wording in there adequately for screening. So that circles us back to where we started at the beginning. I know the county commissioners are how do you say, breathing down their necks. They would like to see something by the end of the year. Present it to them.
I've got one more question, Mr. Mike.
Yes.
Job-wise, what's that going to do for Grant County? This is a manufacturing town, a service-oriented town.
As far as jobs?
Jobs. Yeah. They don't use any construction people from this town?
Well, it'll be the construction end of it. We talked about that last
Okay.
So you do have the construction phase, and then once that's gone, there are people that's supposed to monitor it, maintain it. The number of people, that would be up to them as far as.
The way they made it sound like the last solar
But what I'm
panel,
saying
that
is
they're
this.
gonna hire, when they start construction, they made it sound like they would be hiring local people around here to put it up and do the work.
Right.
But then when you get done,
Right.
like most solar panel fields, they might have somebody in Fort Wayne looking over a certain vast area because they don't need somebody just sitting there.
Not constantly, but what I'm saying is I do want Grant County to be a part of the
Well,
job process.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's pluses and minuses, yes, they'll upfront jobs, minimal job value, you can change the tax base, hopefully.
And there's 2 colleges in this Grant County, so they can use some people from there too, I'm sure.
And both colleges are projecting solar farms.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, so we want the people from Grant County to be able to have a job.
We traditionally, Grove Council traditionally runs job fairs for all the companies we're working with. And they're finding it very difficult for people to show up. We ran one, we had 500 jobs, and only 30 people showed up. Yes. We're on the case after the current articles and false well, mainly because they predominantly graduate job ministers.
Well, yeah.
Where we at? Chuck?
Question I got, I see we're about at the very end.
Yes.
We want to send this back probably in the future to the county commissioner. My recommendation to the county commissioner, once we finish this, that if they don't want it back into the BZA, I think it should be set up like a subdivision and K code. And area plan will make the deal. I know the county commissioner don't want that, but that's my recommendation. Because I think a bigger board. We tell them, we're giving them a suggestion. We would like to see, when we finish this ordinance, here's your ordinance, but our recommendation is take this ordinance, either send it back to the BZA like it's supposed to, or if you're gonna send it to the area plan, you send it like you do CAFOs and subdivisions. They will make the final decision. Not favorable, not unfavorable. They will make the final decision. That's the way I feel. Because if they follow our rules, just like you want to go to certain office in the county and do some, if they follow the rules, it really says it belongs in the BZA. And I know where they want it, but my recommendation is that we send them one of them 2 recommendations. Either send it to BZA like it belongs to, the way that our rules are set in this county. And if you're not gonna do that, and when you send We want it like subdivisions and capers, where the area plan makes the final decision.
I would like to see you use both boards. This would be set up as a rezone. We talked about it very briefly. That ag is rezoned for a solar farm if a solar farm wants to locate on a said property. Set up a rezone to ag-solar. And then set up with a special exception so that we'll also go after it goes through APC to the commissioners, to the BZA. There's 2 public hearings that way, and it's not 2 men deciding this. When you just send it to the commissioners for final decision, that means 2 of the 3 can decide this. It's too much, it's too big a deal. We're gonna live with this for 30 years. Or longer. Our kids are gonna live with it. I think scrutiny from both boards and the commissioners, I think it's the best way to go. It's the best way we can go.
It's a fair way to go.
And another point that's been overlooked is could we encourage solar farms to use areas that are unproductive now? Former industrial areas, areas that are not farming. Land not good for farming. Maybe it's good for solar. Maybe more research needs to be done, just not grab the easy, big hunk of land and go with that.
Have they ever considered that? Have you guys ever considered that?
I imagine they look at all the options as far as locations, old industrial parks that are abandoned, but there's all, I'll let you speak to that if you want, or.
Yeah, I was going to say that's certainly something the county can incentivize. One of the very first steps when we look at areas where we can develop is what is that point of interconnection? Where on the grid is it able to take power? And that sort of dictates the footprint that we're able to build it. So if it is beside a former industrial facility and that makes sense, that would certainly be a consideration for any developer. If it's not, it doesn't make sense to go clear across the county and essentially run a big extension.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can see where Gas City's putting there too because of the main power line.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna put it as close as you
Well,
can.
it's closer for the
Towards
solar
the hot
panels.
But Gas City's not connecting into the grid.
Yeah.
It's a totally different world. You can't use Gas City's location. It's Gas City's paid for that city, you develop that, and they're driving all that energy into the states and Gas City. So it's not their location. It's not going.
Also, don't forget, you gotta have a complete system backup for when it's snowing outside. It's nighttime and they don't work.
Well, they said they.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what they said, they're only so efficient because of ours.
You mentioned it last solar summit about nighttime when you can't make power, how to go to store it. Would you explain that to them? They don't understand.
Storage? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure, I guess I missed something. I had to go to the bathroom, sorry. There's a question from Rex about storage.
When you can't make power and stuff like at night or.
Yeah, so storage is something we consider with solar projects, specifically because you've got a power curve. As you can imagine here, as most places, if you're not in southern Texas or Arizona, you get solar for much of the day, sometimes you don't. Honestly, when it's cloudy, you still get a ton of solar, so we're okay there. But something utilities like to see is a flattening of that curve, where we can extend the amount of day, or the duration of the day that we're providing some power. And so with storage, battery storage, modern battery storage, what we can do is tack on, for example, 2 hours of production on either end by basically capturing some extra power during the middle of the day where we are at peak production and maybe the utility doesn't need it or the system doesn't need it. So what we do is we produce the same amount of power, store some of it, flatten our curve a little bit where we're not producing as much at midday and putting it back in the grid, but using that later. Maybe it's more needed when folks are getting home or when folks are waking up. So that's just kind of a grid benefit. The grid's way complex. A lot of different types of energy production do that. Storage is a great opportunity. So that's something that I'm sure most modern solar projects would consider. But don't have to.
I got a question. How many acres of solar panels are you considering putting in Grant County?
I can't speak for everybody. For our project, at around 150 megawatts or 200 megawatts, it'd be around 1,000 acres of panel.
Around 1,000 acres.
All right, you're one company, there's several looking at different things to do here. Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we will go back and compile and get updated versions out and see what type of strategy we will have. Uh-oh, we have another question.
On your approval order, can we put in town board or, you know, something that, for the cities,
As far as,
the towns, for them to get approval before you even head your way?
Well, it'll always, for incorporated areas, it will always start with you.
Yeah, but so if they built a half mile outside of our city limits, it's not gonna go through us, it'll go straight through the county. But that's still gonna affect our town and all the people around. So I would think
that would be a question for the commissioners, because you're in an unincorporated area at that point.
commissioners take care of unincorporated, so if it falls within our incorporated town.
But that's still gonna, that would affect
Yeah.
everything in our town. If you put 1,000 acres of solar farm around Fairmount, doesn't matter if it's a mile, 2 mile, 3 mile outside of Fairmount, that's gonna affect the whole town, being only 3,000 people. So I would think that should be come to us before it even went to the commission.
That would be something you probably have to, Commissioner, because we'll be giving this back to them. And when it comes back to them, even if they don't like our changes, they can make the changes on our changes. Because what we're doing, we're recommending them something. But if they don't like it, they can change this ordinance. So that's what we have to have for them.
All right, so we got one more again.
I noticed that in some of the counties, there was an issue that I just thought was interesting and kind of sad, that I just wondered if it would be put in our ordinance that county employees would not be allowed to take any gifts from solar companies or contractors when
I think that's probably in the ambulance. Is that in the handbook probably? Probably in the employee handbook, not in the handbook.
Yeah.
I would think, I would hope.
That's why I said it should come back to us for other ones. What I was saying was, you got 3 people voting on it. And I knew Ryan well enough, and I knew he owned the farm. I could be favoritism a little bit, but if you had a bigger board, I could be cut down quicker.
Thank you for coming. All right, Ryan, you can stop.